back by self-directed demand. It's the Home Alone Minute.
Because you asked for it. No one.
How is everybody feeling about the podcast?
Yeah, I thought we would start with sort of a check-in, right? This is our 7th episode. We've got 6 in the can. How you feeling, Jerod? What lessons have you learned?
I think the biggest one is, I believe, feedback from one of our first listeners, which was that we should do a recap of what's happening in the minute up top.
That's good feedback. Let people know what minute they're listening to.
Right. Because if we were to be using this one as an example, this is minute 007, not GoldenEye, just regular 007. And what happens from, let's say, 6 to 7?
That's what we're looking at, right?
Home Alone.
From the timestamp 6 minute to timestamp 7 minute.
Yeah, what's happening in that minute?
This is a self-contained moment. We're not cutting away to any other locations. We're not jumping around the house. This is where the movie slows down for a little bit, and we're hearing about Old Man Marley. We saw a chunk of him introduced in the last minute, but here we have Buzz telling his story to Rod and Kevin, and then almost on the dot, he's staring up at the frame. He's staring up at the camera, like a little past the 7 minute mark, but it's a pretty clean break right at the 7 minute mark of Old Man Marley, the South Bend Shovel Slayer, looking back up at us and hearing some spooky Christmas music.
I think he knew what he was doing. I think he knew even then what this would be. I think he did it for us.
And by he, you mean Raja, our editor?
Right.
Thanks, buddy.
But you're right. This minute is maybe 3 shots, because we have the window,
which mostly stays wide on all 3. I think last episode I praised whoever made a 3-pane window so everybody's head is unobstructed.
Yeah, it was, if not a miracle, it was very well done and very thoughtful.
We got Buzz on the right, Rod in the middle, Kevin on the left. A nice little cousin triangle.
A little tri-cousin action. So, like you say, we established this story in the minute prior, but this minute is really Buzz going further in. He's continuing to tell the story, but he's also objection handling. Maybe he's just trying to be nice. And all the things that Rod asks are all the things that someone that age would ask, but they're also things that, like, the viewer might ask, right? Like, if he killed a bunch of people and you seemingly know this, why isn't he in jail? Why is he walking the streets, salting the sidewalks?
It is a fun combo of sort of movie logic and little kid logic. And Kevin's really the POV of this scene. So this folklore about Old Man Marley is really for Kevin to scare him. But Rod's kind of falling for it too. It would make sense that Rod's falling for it because he's from out of town. But has Kevin never seen this guy before? Has he never heard of it? Is this the first time that he's hearing from an older person the lore?
I'm trying to think back to that age and trying to understand my understanding of my neighbors. I feel like I had a pretty good sense from my parents.
of all the murderers that lived in your subdivision.
Right. Like, I feel like it would have come up.
Yeah, your parents would have leveled with you if there really was a murderer on the block. But kids are stupid.
Kids are afraid of the dark. I guess we might be buying into a little bit of what Buzz is saying about him, but it might also be true that he is a bit of a recluse.
It walks a fun line in the movie of clearly Buzz has established himself as an unreliable character.
Right.
But Marley does look scary here. He's a pretty terrifying figure if you're a little kid. So maybe Buzz isn't right, but this guy definitely does look frightening.
So that's part of it, right? Is yes, it's very unlikely that he's murdered his family and half the people on the block. But is he some kind of nefarious character? We don't really know. Like, is Buzz completely off, or is he exaggerating something that might have a kernel of truth to it?
However it is for us, Kevin buys into it with the way he repeats back, "Mummies."
So that's some combination of great acting and great direction, because when he's like, the salt turns the bodies into mummies, there is a bit of a beat. Like, he processes it and almost in awe of what he's witnessing with, I don't know, 20% fear, but more just 80% like, how fantastic is this story that I'm hearing? He goes, "Mummies."
Which is sort of trailing right behind, almost on top of Rod, going, "Wow." Like, Rod buys it too. And I think we had spent some time last week talking about how Rod was smart. But he's clearly, it's only a minute later. And he's asking these dumb questions, totally buying into what Buzz is saying.
Is there some correlation between thoughtful and gullible?
Maybe. Rod definitely is inquisitive. So maybe he just doesn't doubt what he's knowledgeable, but not necessarily a critical thinker, maybe.
Maybe this is just the first evidence. He's like, I will go and try and find more information, but so far the first things I've heard about this guy is he's not just trying to be nice.
No way.
He's in fact the South Bend Shovel Slayer. I do like his position between Buzz and Kevin, not just physically in the window, but kind of the thing that you pointed out, that he's supposed to be part of the big kids and might have been someone that Buzz was looking to initially to help him kind of improv this fear factory for Kevin, but he just went along with it.
Well, and he's a nice proxy for the audience here too. Kevin's probably seen this kid around. It wouldn't make sense for Buzz to tell the story to Kevin alone, but it makes perfect sense for him to explain it to his cousin who's from out of town. And so we get the exposition too.
So you think Kevin himself believes he's not hearing it directly. He's hearing a conversation between two older kids.
Yeah, and it's sort of, that's reinforced by that shot when he says mummies. It kind of pans across to him by himself. It goes tight on him to show us that really this is what's swimming through his head as he's taking all this in. So he gets the focus. It does make me wonder how much of this Buzz fabricates himself and how much of it is stuff that was repeated to him. He's clearly sort of embellishing, at least, sort of building on top of maybe what he's heard from other people, from other kids probably. Or is he just inventing all of it about this creepy guy who lives across the street?
Yeah, I'm going to say little column A, little column B.
Seems that way, right?
Yeah. Before you say what you need to say about the curtains, I did want to go one layer out and just reiterate what we kind of already touched on, which is that this minute, it not only has, fewer shots, but just pacing wise, it is in pretty stark contrast to every minute we've had up until now.
Yeah, we've had a lightning fast pace up until now. It seems like now the movie's kind of finally settled into a comfortable clip for itself. So here we are. This whole minute takes place in one location, which hasn't been the case for any of our other minutes yet, right?
Yeah, but even still, just the amount of dialogue we get, I feel like this is a very visual minute.
Sure, but it's also it's simple too, though. Like you said, we've got that shot of the window with the three cousins standing, and it reverses on Old Man Marley out on the street, and then towards the end, we get a close up of Kevin, and that's it. We've got like 3 shots in this minute.
I'd be curious to know the words per minute of everything up until now and then this one, because it just doesn't feel as dense.
It doesn't have that West Wingy, everyone's running down the hallways, 15 problems going on at once.
And I know part of that is just the cadence of Buzz kind of telling what is essentially a campfire story. So it's partly due to that, but it doesn't change the fact that we're also feeling that pace.
Yeah, and we probably need it too. One of the disadvantages of watching it 1 minute at a time is maybe losing track of the overall flow of the movie. And we've been at a breakneck speed for so long. It slows down a little bit when we're in Mom and Dad's room, and then it sort of picks back up. And now it's slowing back down even more for, like you said, it's a campfire ghost story.
Now, I'd like to think about how intentional this was, kind of going back to the script. So is this word for word from the screenplay, or how different is this from the source?
It is mildly different. I believe Buzz has a little extra about the lore. And I think one of his lines is about waiting to see him on America's Most Wanted and then turning him in for, I'm quoting here, $1 trillion. And I think we mentioned last week that one of the bigger differences is that he's just coming out to get his mail in the script. The shoveling the sidewalk thing is not in the screenplay that we're looking at least. But the snow shovel detail about him murdering his family and half the people on the block with a snow shovel, that is in there. So it does make a little more sense to have him actually using a snow shovel. And then at the very end, Buzz continues. He turns to Kevin and stalks him to the door and says, "If you don't get out of my room, I'm going to tie you to his front porch and ring the doorbell until he comes out." And that chases Kevin away. And Buzz has a... I'm sorry, I'm just laughing at another name that didn't make the PG cut of Home Alone, but Buzz has a final line to Rod after Kevin's chased away. "The micro weenie has the balls of a butterfly."
So it seems like, as written, maybe Rod's just a little bit more complicit, and Buzz is sort of using him to tell this tale to Kevin to not only scare him, but also just be like, "Get out of my room."
But we don't need it. Buzz has already told him, "I wouldn't let you sleep in my room if you were growing on my ass." So we don't need that fact one more time. We don't need to reiterate it. He's scared Kevin. We've got the foreshadowing of Old Man Marley going to be a significant player in Kevin's life in a few days. So we're good. So it makes total sense that they would get rid of that. It just doesn't need to be there.
Agreed. And like many other instances, I strongly prefer what made the film versus what was on the page.
Oh, yeah.
Zooming back in, a little good idea, bad idea. Good idea, 3 panes for 3 cousins. Bad idea, 3 curtains for 3 cousins.
It's a weird, like, sort of middle curtain situation.
And it doesn't have full coverage.
Jerod, what color are those curtains?
The outer ones are white, beige, something. And the middle, like, not full coverage one is like a maybe gray, blue.
Something like that. What colors are they not?
They're not holly or ivy.
They're not some mistletoe combination.
Not some wintergreen. They're not some poinsettia.
Seems like a missed opportunity. You've got every other base covered in this movie. But these curtains, they're just going to be taupe. What was this scary old person situation like in your neighborhood?
Not one.
Really?
We had a, I guess, resident old person who was the mythic old person in the neighborhood, but she was very friendly. She wasn't active, but she was friendly. So we didn't really have anything that would spawn lore like this. Did you have a Marley?
Not really. I mean, this is an archetype that shows up all the time. I think when Old Man Marley shows up in this movie, we're already very familiar with this type of a character, whether we had one in our neighborhood or not. This is sort of a combination of Boo Radley and Mrs. Dubose from To Kill a Mockingbird.
Right.
So it at least goes back that far, late 50s, early 60s. And it probably goes back even further. I remember a buddy lived next door. Luke lived next door. And there was a cul-de-sac side street like behind his house. And sometimes we would sort of cut through and we would walk, along the side of his property and eventually have to sort of cut through, the person who lived behind him's property too. And I remember getting scolded by some old lady we didn't know. We were on her property. We were walking, along the boundary of her property. And I think she was understandably trying to nip that in the bud, didn't want it to become a habit of ours to, just sort of wear a trail through her yard. So she came out and I'm sure said something that seemed very reasonable to her, but just sounded like a witch to us, getting chased off by this elderly stranger.
All strangers feel strange when you're young.
Right. And if they have any sort of beef with you and they got to come out, even if they say it like a nice way, you're going to feel like you're being scolded. So I don't even remember if she might have been nice about it, but in my memory palace, it's a very Mrs. Dubose. Don't you say hey to me, you ugly girl. So that's I'll save it for the To Kill a Mockingbird minute.
The way you delivered that reminded me of a work that is nowhere near as deserving of acclaim, but the M. Night Shyamalan film, The Happening, where the woman is holding a glass and looking at Marky Mark and going, I see you eyeing my lemon drink.
That's pretty good. Now I got to watch that movie.
Yeah, do yourself a favor. There are weirdly creepy bits that stick with you forever. But you're right. When you're a kid, you're constantly, or, maybe we should stop projecting that which we have in common, which is that we feel like we're putting everyone out just by existing. Maybe not every kid feels that way.
It's possible that some people are normal.
Either way, that's a pretty rough baseline for getting even the least bit agitated by an adult.
I didn't get harder as I grew up. I'm still a soft, scared, frightened person. I don't think feeling hurt and attacked by even the simplest of reprimands it's gone away, really. But we fear what we don't understand, and when we're little kids, we don't understand anything.
Nope. So it's a lot of fear.
Clearly setting up the last half of the movie where Kevin does learn exactly that lesson, to not fear the unknown, to not desire to live a life alone, to build relationships with people and find the value in them. He finds that with Marley, but none of that's conflict that needs to get resolved unless you set it up really well with this minute, where you take a breath and you spend 90 seconds on this guy at the beginning.
I kind of thought you were going toward death and the whole not being afraid of the unknown.
But Kevin's not afraid of dying.
But we could be.
Well, now.
But does that make the lesson any less valid? Whether Kevin's learning it about his neighbor and we're learning it about the great beyond?
I think where Kevin lands is acceptance and letting people into your life, the value of relationships. I don't know if we'll have the same reconciliation with mortality, where we welcome it.
You don't think so?
It'd be nice, but I don't know. You hear about those old people who are just ready to die.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's me.
No, I think I'm pretty close.
Are we closer to Old Man Marley's age than we are to Kevin's age at this point in our lives?
Yep.
That's a sobering mathematical fact, right? But it's a looking ahead. We don't know what that'll be like for us, but we can look back so easily.
Even though, like you say, those memories are painted in not only our perception of the world then, but however many times we've accessed them since. It's been so long. So we perceive that as something that we remember quite well, but we probably don't. But it doesn't even have to be that long ago. Like, my wife does the same thing about 5 years ago and says, "Don't you remember this?" And I'm like, "No."
That's different though, because that didn't get solidified into your brain.
Oh, you're saying how accurate are your core memories? Not like any arbitrary moment, but just.
Well, I would assume it's a spectrum. So we have these core memories that are sort of based in trauma and based in really impactful moments of our lives where we can still remember these vivid details. But there's just one notch below that. It's a dial. And as you ramp it down, it gets fuzzier and fuzzier. So at what point are you just completely wrong or have no recollection of it?
Well, because we would assume that it correlates almost directly with age. As you go further back, it gets fuzzier, but you're right. There are layers. There are things that I remember about, age 3 that may not be clear, but I remember them. Whereas there are things that happened a year ago that if you just ran through the day, I'd be like, yeah, I don't remember that.
Yeah, the birth of your child.
Right.
You have
totally out.
Yeah, you have a child, by the way.
Is that what that is?
Yeah. He needs to eat every day, by the way.
I I kept turning my headphones up because I couldn't hear. I was like, do I have the movie running in another tab? Which I should have. So just going back to kind of pulling together both the curtain piece and kind of what you were saying about kids and our perception and fear. Old Man Marley didn't even say anything to them. He just looked up into the window.
He's aided significantly by some swelling John Williams spooktacular music, though, because that
boom, 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 boom.
It really drives home what a menacing figure this is. And it's wild that it also sounds like Christmas music.
That's a strange talent for the resume. Like, one, how do you even develop such a talent? And two, how few opportunities are there for you to exercise that talent?
There's this and The Nightmare Before Christmas. And then I guess you get Krampus a little later, right? I'll save that for the Krampus minute.
That one, yeah, that's way over my head. So, what are we missing?
We're probably missing, well, this is a combination of exterior and interior. The camera's always outside in this minute, but pointed at...
With big quotes, right? Quote outside.
Yeah, pointed outside the window. And we discussed last week of whether or not if this is soundstage wall or this is the house proper. And I would assume it's the house. It's the house. I would assume that the soundstage stuff that they built didn't include exterior. But
you don't think?
No. Brick's expensive.
Real brick, maybe, but something that looks enough like brick.
Oh, go back. That's not paper mache. When did you learn that paper mache is spelled funny?
I think 6th grade.